Brian Allman, of course, is with us here. Let's bring Brian in if he's ready. Hey, Brian, how are you today?
Hey, Matt, it's good to see you again.
Yes, and so Governor Little's. We were going over Governor Little's address. We kind of hit on some high points, and talk about the volleyball team and Trump's, wanting to help Trump's vision for America and that sort of thing. What was your takeaway from the speech, and what did you hear around the Capitol?
The biggest thing that jumped out at me about the speech was that there wasn't any single central big program. 2 years ago, he introduced the launch grant, giving money to high school graduates to go to certain workforce training programs. Last year, he announced a $2 billion school bonding program that would do, repair school facilities and infrastructure and, attempt to take some of the burden off of local property taxpayers. There wasn't anything really big this year. It was just all more of the same, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, he seems to think Idaho's going pretty well, so he doesn't need to, do any big initiatives this time. But there were really no surprises. Perhaps the most noteworthy thing was the $50 million for school choice, which of course, matches the amount in Representative Wendy Horman's presentation earlier that morning, which tells me that they're probably at least mostly on the same page on that issue.
Yeah, and I think, and this is one of the things that Idaho has kind of been lagging in as we watch other, deep red Republican states, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Arizona, of course, leading the way for a while. Do you think the pressure got to Brad Little on this issue when he shows up to to these governors' meetings and stuff and says, man, it's not looking good for you?
Well, I think he sees which way the wind is blowing. If say whatever else you want about Governor Little, he pays attention to where politics is going. And obviously, the Mountain States Policy Center did that poll showing that a majority of Idahoans would support at least a tax credit for children going to non-public schools. It's been growing and growing and growing and growing. As you talked with Senator Nichols earlier, we started the conversation with the 1038, a big ESA, and then last year we had the tax credit, and now this year there's another tax credit on the table as well. So it's been coming, and other states keep enacting it, and it's a very popular policy once it is enacted. Obviously not popular with the public school establishment, but they're obviously they want to control their little fiefdom. But people like it, families like it, parents like it, and presumably students like it as well. So I think he's gotten to the point where he's gotten out in front of it. Earlier this year, there were some reports that Governor Little and Superintendent Debbie Critchfield were starting to discuss what was going on. And one of the things I've been hearing is that it's the accountability measure that's going to be the real sticking point. The governor wants some form of accountability, however you define that, perhaps making any teachers in a private school or a homeschool or micro school be a certified teacher, or establishing some controls over what curricula the students use, or making them take standardized tests to make sure they're learning. And
But Brian, isn't that the whole issue though? I mean, that's the whole point. Our schools are failing. I mean,
exactly.
they're. I mean, sure, are they better than some other states? And they're they in a higher. The whole country's school system is failing. I mean, we have a generation of kids. I'm probably one of them. I mean, look at the way I speak. Sometimes it's just completely off the charts, right? But it's like the whole system is corrupted. I mean, it's woke. It's got. I mean, from various degrees of wokeness, right? And so when you tell, oh my gosh, when you're telling parents, well, you need to have accountability, where's the accountability in schools? Where's the accountability for public schools? I mean, the unions, you can't fire a teacher. You just can't fire a teacher for underperforming. Like, they have to do something grossly illegal and the cops have to take them out of the class. I'm sure there's probably teachers that are sitting, I don't know, I don't want to say this, it's probably wrong, but I just like, I don't understand. I don't understand. We had that, I don't know if we mentioned it yesterday. We had that clip of Representative Mickelson from last year's education presentation saying, what's to stop parents from taking this tax credit and then dumping their kids back into public school? I mean, the mentality of these people is they're so disrespectful. They think parents don't want what's best for their child. And I mean, if you're sending your kids to a private school and you're paying money, you are going to want to make sure that you shopped for schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
If teacher certification and standardized tests and strict control of curricula were all that were required to make successful schools, then our public schools would be fine, and you wouldn't have people clamoring to find alternatives. During yesterday's House Republican leadership press conference, which followed the governor's speech and outlined their vision for what they want to see, Representative Jason Monks, who's a supporter of school choice, said that he disagreed on that issue. He feels that the accountability comes from the parents themselves, and if a private school is failing your child, you're going to take your child out and send them somewhere else. But you don't always have that option with public schools. And that's where I think this debate really needs to go, because there is more accountability in the free market just by virtue of it being the free market. And that is, I think, a conservative position. That is a traditionally Republican position. But you get some people who are so caught up in the system as it is today that they want to extend that system to anything outside of it, which as you said, is kind of mind-boggling.
Look, Brian, I'm telling you, we're going to break a story here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, about a school in Idaho where the parents, I can't say too many. We're going to break a story. We're going to break a story. You want to talk about accountability? Where is the accountability in these public school systems? So
when a public school is failing and only 30% of students can pass, what does it get? It gets more money. When a private school is failing 70% of its students, it goes out of business. And that's where I think real accountability would be.
That's right. You're exactly right. But we heard from the governor there's going to be unprecedented investment in education and in jobs and in all the infrastructure and all this stuff. Like,
one of my favorite moments in Idaho politics was the first time I ever testified on a bill. It was the governor's education funding bill from the special session in 2022. And I happened to be one of the first people to testify. So I got up and I said, you're going to hear people say that this is an unprecedented and historic investment in public education. But remember, we heard that earlier this session. We heard it last session. We hear it every year. So how can it be unprecedented and historic if we keep hearing it? And it really made everybody else who testified after nervous, because now they couldn't use those words anymore.
Yeah, good for you, man. That's what we're talking about. And the only way that it is unprecedented or historic is if they spend even more money. It's as if our public school system is Ukraine. I mean, I think that's kind of like what we have to start painting the Idaho public school system with blue and yellow colors and just call it what it is. They just can't seem to give enough money to the Zelenskys of the school districts. Okay.
Well, for a lot of people in government, their only tool, their only hammer is spending money, and so they're going to use that tool everywhere. And if that doesn't work, they think that they just need to hammer harder.
Right. Well, the tool of the electorate is voting, and this House and the Senate is getting more and more conservative, and we are holding people accountable. And so, as Senator Nichols said earlier, as we have alluded to, we believe Governor Little and leadership is understanding the winds are changing. They're blowing in a different direction, especially what's going to come down from the federal government. So we're going to keep tabs on this. And Brian, we know you will as well. Anything else you need to report today for the good folks of Idaho?
Well, I was just going to bring up one more thing from the governor's speech. He wanted to set aside $100 million for tax relief. And in the House leadership press conference, Speaker Moyle said that he wants at least 3 times that. So we're going to see some negotiation on that. This morning during the budget hearing, I saw part of it before I had to take off for a meeting. The governor's budget is taking a very conservative estimate as far as revenue, which means that they're not going to have as much money ostensibly to give back in tax relief. But I think the House is going to say, no, we can give more money back to the people. We don't need to we don't need to be so stingy when it comes to giving people's own taxes back. So that's going to be a big issue that's going to play out through the session as well.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to, and of course this whole grocery tax credit. I know you've been doing a lot of research on the history of the grocery tax credit, which is what Governor Little called it. That's what people officially call it, and so it's fascinating. So we'll get into that. We got a long session here. There's a long fast session, but I'm sure we'll get into all of that when those things come up. No need to belabor it now. All right, Brian. Well, let's make sure everybody knows where to follow you and keep tabs on your work.
Yeah, gemstatechronicle.com is where I publish everything, including the Idaho Insider. It gives you, you click on it, go to legislature, and you can see profiles for every one of the 105 legislators. I'll be adding even more as I have time. But then follow me on X at GemStateBrian, where I'll be live tweeting most everything that I can.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for coming in. We'll see you tomorrow, and look for you online. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Matt.